Welcome to Telos World 2020. It's my pleasure to host this event today. And it's my pleasure to introduce Rieki Cordon, who is our first speaker today. Hi, Rieki.
Hi.
Rieki is
How you guys
based
doing?
in Indonesia. Rieki is the founder of Seeds. Seeds is a payment platform and a financial ecosystem to empower humanity and heal our planet. Now, it's an exciting project. Welcome, Rieki, and we are excited to have you here. Please take it away from here.
Cool. So my name's Rieki. I'm the facilitator at Seeds. We're calling it a conscious currency for regenerative society. I think many of you have already heard a little bit about Seeds, but I actually wanted to start off this talk with a little bit about why I'm doing this and what brings me here. So about 3-4 years ago now, my partner and I were thinking about having a kid and bringing some life into this world. And it was a really daunting exploration that she and I were going through as we really had to consider what world we were bringing our child into. And I think a lot of you have been paying attention about the course and direction our world's headed right now. There's fires all across the globe. I mean, every day we're seeing the extinction of species, and just as a whole, it doesn't seem like we're going in a very beautiful direction or in a direction that we felt right bringing children into this world. So it was a very difficult decision for us, but after a lot of time and contemplation and really just sitting with that thought, that we eventually felt like it would be a right decision. And we started trying, and actually she got pregnant. And about 2 months into that pregnancy, we were a little overwhelmed, to say the least. The places we were living, the environments that we were spending our time into were just extremely depressing. And she went into a deep state of depression during that time, and she ended up having a miscarriage about 3 months in. And it was at that point that she and I just kind of stopped everything we were doing, the course that we were taking, and had to really, really ground in and decide, what are we doing? Where are we going? And how do we create a world and a culture that we would be honored and happy and just completely blissful to bring a child into this world before we ever tried again? And that was the start of our real earnest exploration into how do we shift culture? Like, how do we shift the course of humanity and where we're going? So taking it back a little bit further, in about 2011, I first heard about Bitcoin and blockchain, and I'd done a lot of studying of the financial systems, especially after 2008 and the financial collapse at that point. And I got really excited about Bitcoin because I felt like it was a much better alternative than US dollar. However, I didn't really dive into it at the time because I didn't feel like it would actually be a solution to help shift our financial system. I mean, especially the way Bitcoin was set up with, mining, with the exponential demand for resources in order to mine it, and just the economics of it, where it concentrated more value into the hands of people who already had value. And it didn't provide any value for the really, really important things that were oppressing society at that time. So either way, actually, I'm going to jump into this because I think I'm taking this in a really, really wrong route. But I put up a slide here, and it says 1 million species are at risk of extinction. And this is something our globe is facing right now, where we're seeing deforestation, fire, and pollution all across the planet. And while we're seeing this, the world spent $5.2 trillion subsidizing fossil fuel use in a single year to make fossil fuels actually cheaper than renewable energy. And on top of this, in the last decade, the US alone spent about $4.5 trillion war in the Middle East. So we have these monumental crises facing humanity, where we really need to drive our value towards regenerating and restoring our planet's health. But instead, we're spending money on these really myopic, short-sighted interests. And the only reason this is possible is because the vast majority of people actually don't have a say in how our financial systems are operated or how our collective wealth is spent. And in just over a decade, central banks spent created $12.3 trillion. Now, the vast majority of humanity that's using these currencies didn't get any of this value. We didn't get any of this money that was printed. We didn't get a say in if we should make it, and we didn't get a say in how any of it should be spent. So again, this is the backdrop that is the foundation of blockchain. And I don't have to really preach to the choir here. I think many of you are aware of this, and actually probably what brings many of you to this movement. So on top of this, our fiat systems are exploitative by design and degenerative by default. And what I mean by this is when money is made with debt and interest attached to it, it requires more money just to pay back the money that was created. So what this does is it requires growth in order to maintain itself, in order to avoid widespread defaults, recessions, depressions. These economic cycles that we're constantly experiencing are a symptom of a diseased financial system. And the foundation of that is how they are designed and set up. And I say degenerative by default because in order to keep growing the money system, we have to keep transforming our natural world and our cultural gifts, things that weren't part of the money system. We have to convert them into money to keep fueling this system. So this is why when governments across the world, we understand that our financial system and our global crises that are just destroying our planet, we understand that this is happening, but they seem completely impotent to be able to do anything about it, because in all reality, they can't. Because if they were to address the foundation of these problems, the underlying foundations that make those systems in the first place would fail. I mean, governments can't actually stop this crisis because they would have to give up all their power and control in order to do so, which would then make them obsolete to be able to address it. So this is where I think that blockchain and the cryptocurrency movement as a whole offers us a tremendous opportunity to be able to build foundations for an entirely new economic system and financial system and governance system to be able to build on top of this, to create foundations for a different sort of society, a different sort of global civilization. So at the backdrop of this, we have systems that we're operating in and living in today. They were designed by people who lived hundreds of years ago. I don't mean to chastise those people because they didn't actually have the tools and techniques that we have today. It wasn't even feasible for them to consider a governance system where people voted directly. I mean, they barely had mail at the time. So how were they going to orchestrate a system where people can vote? When you had to hop on your horse and ride 4 days to go to a massive coliseum and yell, it made no sense. So they designed these representative democracies at that time because it was the most logical thing for them to do. And the same thing with our financial systems. There wasn't a potential or a capacity for them to know what was happening in the money system, how much money was being used, where it was being used and spent. It was all paper form. So it had to be created and centralized. They needed these central institutions in order to mint that money to make sure that it wasn't plagiarized. So I don't mean to chastise the systems that we're operating in because they were the best thing at that time. But the internet and blockchain and all these technologies that are emerging right now give us a new capacity to completely rethink how we set up our financial and economic systems. So this is a little bit out of left field, but this is me taking a shot at Bitcoin. So Bitcoin did come onto the scene, again, with all of this understanding. One of the big problems with Bitcoin is it used this technology to mirror an old technology, and that technology is gold. So it essentially mirrored and mimicked how gold operates, which is why Bitcoin is sometimes also called digital gold. So the problem with this is that it becomes too volatile. It's not an ideal medium of exchange. And furthermore, with it having such a scarce value, it concentrates wealth into the hands of people who heard about Bitcoin early on. So this is also why I call Bitcoin a revolution. So when I say revolution, what it means is that it's actually literally revolving. So a revolution is when power changes hands from one to a number within the same paradigms, within the same power structure. That's essentially what Bitcoin's doing. It's concentrating wealth into another form of elite. But what Bitcoin, I feel we could have done better with Bitcoin is in how we distributed this value that it's growing. So this is where Seeds comes onto the stage. Seeds is attempting to be a better currency. So there's a lot of tokens and currencies in existence today. So over here we have cash and digital assets. Some of them have no fees for exchanging it, such as cash. If I hand cash to another person, it's free for me. But with our digital currencies and our fiat systems, we don't have any voice in those systems like we were speaking about before. And then you come on to the other side where we have some technology and blockchain platforms that are designed to be able to give voice and governance to the people who are operating within inside them. But many of these systems also come with fees. So the problem here is that they don't actually become better than cash, because if I have to pay someone in front of me and I can hand them $20, that's always going to be better for me than it is to, exchange Bitcoin with them or even exchange any form of cryptocurrency that comes with a fee. Furthermore, cash is designed to go down in value. It's always better to spend it today than it is to spend it tomorrow. So it's always better for me to spend my cash now. Why it's better for me to hold on to my Bitcoin, EOS, etc., because the value is expected to go up. So these commodity tokens aren't actually designed for a better form of currency. So what Seeds is actually stepping onto the stage to do is say, how do we make an ideal medium exchange? How do we make a currency that's actually better than free to spend, so it becomes even better than cash? And how do we give people governance over this currency so that they feel like it's theirs and that it is theirs? So this is kind of going all over the place here, but I want to wrap this back around to the beginning. So the reason we started Seeds is because we wanted to create a financial system that was regenerative by default. And we're sitting with a really important question is, how do we align our financial decisions that are driving our planet towards our ecological outcomes that we need right now to be able to restore and heal the global crises that we're facing? So how is it that we design a financial system that at the base level, just by using it, it could be regenerative? So this is what we were sitting with and we're thinking about. And I brought up how the central banks operate today because it's very valid in this entire conversation. So Bitcoin missed out on something. It was using a centralized ledger, and it actually knew, not a centralized, distributed ledger, but it had a single source of information that told it what was happening within its financial system. So what it could have done was actually create an algorithm that tracks the growth of the Bitcoin economy and grew new Bitcoins to meet that new growth so that the value of Bitcoins remains stable. And this is essentially what Seeds does. It tracks the growth of the economy, and when the economy grows, it grows new seeds so that the value of the seeds remains more stable, so it becomes a more ideal medium of exchange and unit of account, so that you can price things in seeds and know that it's going to be generally that same price because of how our economic and financial system's operating. And why it becomes regenerative is how we're spending this new money that we're growing. So we can imagine that, of that $12 trillion central banks made, they set $4 trillion of it aside to replant trees and, end world hunger. This is a nice statistic I like to throw around is, the UN estimates that we could end world hunger with about $230 billion. That sounds like an astronomical number, but when you compare it against the $12 trillion that we made, we could have ended world hunger several times over and still had money to, set up a colony on Mars and do all these other things that humanity would like to do, but doesn't have the resources to do. So this is what Seeds does. As our economy is growing, we're growing new currency and then deliver it to all of these things that actually can regenerate our planet and give value to the people who are actually using that system. So here we are talking about the evolution of these systems that we're seeing. Cooperatives are where people themselves have control and governance over that system that they're participating in. They started off with pretty small ideas with just cooperative organizations where people were in charge of that organization. It grew to the platform movement where people are actually in charge of platforms as a whole. And then Bitcoin came onto the scene more recently and opened up this concept of a cooperative financial system, where it's a whole entire financial system that's governed by the people who are part of it. So I think the next step in this evolution is to take these concepts and make a cooperative society where the people themselves are actually in direct control of every aspect of that society and how it operates, where you don't have to rescind control to a minority of the people who are part of that system, but where everyone has a direct say in how all aspects of their society operates. So my talk today is going to be kind of short, so that's why I'm going to jump into some more of the details. That was the broader context. Is we're wanting to create what we call a minimum viable society, which is essentially a toolkit that allows us to be able to design and experiment with different forms of societies. And the first one that we're trying to put out is what we call a regenerative society. And I'm going to get into that a little bit more, but I want to talk about all of these different pieces of it. So right now we're releasing an application that we call the Passport, and here's some screenshots of it that you see right here, and you'll see throughout the rest of this. So the Passport consists of 6 main components. The first one being a wallet that you see here, which is essentially a way to be able to send and receive money. But what's unique about Seeds is that you can send and receive money with no fees, and actually the more you use it, the higher your contribution. And the higher your contribution, the more of that money that we're growing you get. So this is where Seeds calls itself a better than free currency. So the more you contribute, spending it as a form of contribution, the more you actually earn of this collective wealth that's being grown, and the more you're rewarded for being able to participate in it. And this is how we actually think we can get some pretty serious adoption of this new financial system, is that it completely reverses the fee structure that's common with our current systems, where Visa's charging 3%, Bitcoin's charging pennies. Like every currency right now charges you to send digital payments. Or in best cases, they're free. But if we can swip that around and make it better than free, then just that small step might be enough to be able to get some people inside of this. And that might be how the majority of the people actually step into this new system. But then once they're in, they start seeing these other things where, you can connect with other people within this society, see what they're up to, be able to join together to work on projects together, and actually list what you have for sale and your other gifts directly. So now we have a tool set similar to Fiverr and any other of those platforms where you're able to offer your services. But here you can do it for free. And again, there's no fees. So it's actually better than free to be able to sell and exchange with each other. Second, you have the marketplace. So this is where organizations can list themselves. And so there's several benefits that we actually give to organizations for joining. So taking it back to central banks made 12 trillion, imagine if 4 trillion of that actually went out to all the organizations that were within that society, within that currency system that helped it grow. So it's kind of like saying, hey, Amazon, you've made a massive amount of economic contributions to the US dollar system. We're going to give you a payback for having done that. And that's actually what we do within our financial system. All the organizations that join to be able to help move money around and give people a way of spending Seeds, we're actually going to give them a kickback part of this currency. So what this actually opens up the door to is the first ever better than free platforms, where developers and the people behind platforms can earn revenue without actually charging their consumers and their community fees. And this concept was at the foundation of what got Seeds started. So I'm going to take a little tangent here. So where Seeds actually began was we wanted to create a local peer-to-peer food system. So there's a platform that enables neighbors to be able to buy and sell food with each other. Some guy can grow food out of his lawn, sell it to their neighbor, they cook it out of their house, and they sell it to Bob down the street for dinner that night. We think this is vitally important for making more resilient food systems, for getting healthier food, giving more people home-cooked meals, and a whole host of other reasons. But a lot of platforms have tried to enter this space and they failed because if there's a platform that's charging fees to facilitate a trade between you and your neighbor, maybe you'll use that platform the first day, but then after that, you're going to just hand them cash and pay and circumvent the platform. And this is what happened and a lot failed. So about 3.5 years ago, one of my friends came to me because he was building a platform like this and started asking about cryptocurrency and how we could, build a financial system to underpin that. And this is actually where Seeds really began, was to create the first better than free platform, so that it's actually better to use that platform and it still generates revenue for the developers behind it. The other aspect that we make, I'll go down this hole. So how organizations get part of that 4 trillion, a part of that money that is grown, is what we call their reputation. And this is a regenerative reputation. So all the people within the system actually rate organizations with how regenerative they are. And the more regenerative you are, the more ethical your organization is. If you're taking those extra steps to do good for the people, planet, and communities that you serve, then you're actually going to earn more money. So this is one of the ways that we align financial interests towards that ultimate goal of regenerating and restoring our planet. So another component that we have within the passport is a forum. So this is similar to Steam It in Nature, where people actually get rewarded for sharing their ideas. So if you get upvotes, you can earn reputation. And as an individual, the higher reputation you have for actually participating in governance and these ideas, the more of that currency you earn as well. So we've incentivized people to actually come up here and help govern it and evolve it. And then the final piece that we've offered in this passport is a way to actually govern. So there's 2 different forms of self-governance that operate within the application, and there's a local governance and a global governance. So when you join Seeds, you actually join your bioregion that you're a part of, and then you're able to make decisions as that group with how you spend part of the funds that that organization's holding. And then also you join the global organization and you get to participate in the governance that manages the Seeds as an entire entity. So how this maps over is, imagine the Federal Reserve of the US with the national government is one system. So if you're a US citizen, you're part of the whole US with the Federal Reserve system, the governance system, but you're also part of a local governance system, which is kind of like a Utah, California, etc. So we've kind of mirrored those systems where people are able to govern at their local level and at their global level. All right, I'm being aware of time, so I'm just gonna stop showing that because I actually want to be able to leave a little bit more time to open it up for questions. So I did share quite a bit there, but the whole concept is that we want to provide a platform that allows us to be able to build a foundation for a different sort of economic system and society. That when people actually operate in it and use it, it can grow the resources necessary for us to be able to regenerate our planet. And to final point that I know I didn't touch on a lot is, so again, imagine if the Federal Reserve was actually letting humanity distribute part of that money that it created. Half of it would go to the people and organizations that are in it. The other half goes to these DAOs, these global and local organizations, that the people themselves get to direct how this money goes. And 1/4 of those funds are earmarked for regenerative grants, so that organizations can propose to this pool of money to get funding to do all those things that aren't necessarily profitable, but are needed to heal our planet, such as replanting native forests, setting up local food systems, cleaning up our rivers, making our rivers drinkable again, and all these beautiful things that would serve humanity so well, but we just can't seem to find the money for. This financial system, as it grows, actually directs more money to those endeavors, opposed to how our current system operates, which does the opposite. All right, so this was a really big concept. I tried to throw at you guys all real quickly, but I do want to open it up for some questions now because I think that's the best way to be able to present this. So if there are any questions, I will.
Well, it's a great project, Rieki. Tell us about yourself. What were you doing before Seeds and how you came into the crypto space?
Sure. So I came to the crypto space back in 2011 because I was in the deep, dark corners of Reddit and I was hearing about this better dollar system, and started mining it back when 3G graphics cards actually worked for mining. But again, that wasn't really my passion. My passion at that time was more permaculture and self-sustainability. So shortly after discovering Bitcoin, I actually moved to Central America, bought up some land with some friends of ours, and started growing our own food. And we wanted to live off grid. And our thinking at that time was that we still didn't see the world going in a good direction, but we felt the solution was kind of running away from it and creating our own self-sustainable haven. But after so much time there, we realized that actually wasn't the right solution, because we weren't protected there. And it's a weird way of thinking, to try to run away from the problem rather than try to address it head on. And yeah, my passion is just in financial systems and complex systems and chaos theory and permaculture. And I took a lot of that thinking and tried to apply it to a financial system and say, how do we create a financial system that's designed more like our ecologies, that are symbiotic, that are cooperative, that drive value towards the things that make the whole system thrive? So that's kind of where my passions all intersect. And that's what got me so excited about Seeds, and why I'm so dedicated to it, is because it's just all the beautiful things that I love all in one.
Now, I read something about the Haifa DAO. Is that part of Seeds?
Yeah, so Haifa is one of the organizations building Seeds. So Seeds couldn't be a truly decentralized platform or system if an organization owned it, or even if the organization that was helping build it was centralized in itself. So one of our steps that we've started taking about 1.5 years ago, but we're launching the platform actually in about 9 days, so February 1st, is what we call a decentralized autonomous organization. I know a lot of you are familiar with DAOs, and our DAO is called Haifa DAO. It's a holacracy-based DAO, so it's one that actually gives a lot more power to individual roles, so that they have more autonomy to be able to enact what they need to without having to put everything up to a proposal. So we've kind of reshaped the way that organizations or DAOs are being structured to, again, make it a little bit more cooperative, it's more of creating a trustful system rather than a trustless system. So it's not treating everyone like we don't know them and we automatically distrust them, and we try to figure out ways to make sure that they aren't trying to cheat us. But it's more like ways to make sure that we can decentralize power, make sure governance is spread out equitably, and give more ways for people that are outside the system to be able to show up, propose ideas, and collaborate in the projects that we're working on. So that's a whole other deep dive that we can get into sometime.
So Seeds is a mobile app, and it's available on both iPhone and Android, or?
So Seeds is a DApp. So it's actually not the app itself. So there's a lot of different things plugging into Seeds, and there's already actually 2 apps that connect to Seeds right now. But one of the apps that connect to Seeds is called a Passport. So that is what's on iOS and Android, and it's one of the things that Haifa is building. You can actually get an invite to it if you want to start playing with that. We launched our alpha in November, and we're planning on doing a public release of that on February 20th. It's come a long way, and it's really beautiful, and it's pretty awesome. I love playing with it. So if you want an invite to that, come to joinseeds.com, sign up, and we're going to actually do a citizenship drop where people can become citizens for doing good deeds within the next week or so. So if you go and sign up, you might have an opportunity to really move forward.
Excellent. We will post all that in the show links so people can come and join Seeds. It's a very exciting program, and we are very, very grateful that you took the time to come and talk to us today, Rieki. Thank you.
Sure. You're welcome. Yeah, that was fun.